if you imagine me as like a castle, why not? And you've got the drawbridge. It's like all of a sudden, with absolutely no warning, the drawbridge comes up. And what I mean is that I can be out, I can be chatting, I can look like I'm having a wonderful time, and I feel great. And it's just like the flick of a switch. It's like, I need to now leave. I've got to go home. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Life by Your Design podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Boyd. I'm a master hypnotist, human design reader, and I'm here to help you play with convention, tap into your purpose, and live life by your design. Hello, and welcome back, beautiful people, to the Life by Your Design podcast. And on today's episode, what I want to do is I want to dig a little bit more into being a projector. So this is very much one of those human design episodes. So if you are on a journey of starting to learn about your human design and perhaps even discover the human design of people around you in your life, then hopefully this will be useful for you. You may know that projectors have been on the planet for about 250 years only, and we make up about 20% of the population. And what is quite interesting with being a projector is that the world that we live in, especially around work and energy, is not designed or set up for a projector. So many projectors know on some level that they don't quite fit in. And actually discovering that they are a projector can be a really profound experience. This was certainly the case for me when I first found out I was a projector, and I kind of read the description and I had it described to me, and I was working with a business coach at the time. It all kind of made sense, and stuff that I had not quite really understood about myself in the past, I was able to make a little bit of sense and peace around some of those kind of aspects of my being. And I see that with a lot of the projectors that I will do human design reads for, or that I work with hypnosis and the various stuff that we work with one-on-one, is that as we dive into the design and some of those aspects of being a projector come through, I mean, I've literally had two women in tears on my couch only recently, because it really does help you to see parts of yourself, make sense of yourself that perhaps haven't felt like they fitted in. So what I actually wanted to talk about in today's podcast was this isn't going to be this is what a projector is, but I wanted to share some of the reflections of being a projector that I have personally had. So one thing that's always worth just reiterating with human design is that it's not that you take the insights, the wisdom, the information from the human design, you take it as read, and that there's one way that will be experienced. You get to take that and then play with it, see how it plays out in your life and how exactly that manifests, how that works in your world and your reality. So your actual lived experience of parts of your design are going to be yours, very personalized and very unique to you. So what I'm sharing is just some of the things. It's not all of them, because I didn't want this to be a 2-hour-long podcast. I'm just going to share some of the things that I have noticed and experienced about being a projector as I have played with my design. And so if you're listening to this as a projector, then you may find that there are going to be moments where you're going to be like nodding away, going, oh my God, yes, that's exactly what I experienced. But there might be parts where you're like, oh, that's an interesting reflection, but that's not quite how that plays out for me. And if you're sat here and you're going, well, I'm not even a projector, it still could be really useful, because as I said, there is 20% of us floating around on this planet. And it's very likely that there is somebody in your life who is a projector. And this may give you just a little bit more insight into what it's like for us actually moving through the world and some of our experience, which can be a useful comparison against perhaps your type. Now, just very quickly to frame it before we jump in, there are 5 types in human design. We have manifestors, generators, manifesting generators, then we have reflectors, and we have projectors. If you do not know your human design type and you'd like to, then you can get your free human design body graph from my website. You just go to michelleboyd.com/human design chart. You pop in your date of birth, place of birth, and time of birth, and your body graph will pop out. And you will see your type in the top right-hand corner, just written out for you there. So go ahead and grab that if you don't have it, because you may also be a projector, or you may not, or you will see. Okay, so parts of the things that I have experienced as a projector. One of the things I would like to also caveat is that I know that for a lot of people, when they discover they're a projector, they don't necessarily feel that happy about it. That isn't something that I personally experienced. For me, I was like, oh, it just makes so much sense. And I so feel like a projector. And I think, and this is my very cup half full approach to everything in life, but I think there's so many wonderful things about being a projector. You know, the wisdom that we have to share, our ability to guide, and the fact that I can see into people and into things and see patterns and see stuff that sometimes people can't see in themselves very clearly, I find to be really, really wonderful things about being a projector. But also, you know, there's some aspects to this type that are perhaps a little more challenging. So one of the first things that I wanted to reflect on was energy. And this is the energy in the design and my energy to do. And this balance between being and doing, which is a very crucial thing for projectors to play with and explore and see how it works for them. I will say that I'm an energy projector because what I do have is I have 3 of the motors defined in my design. So my will center, my solar plexus, and also my root center are all designed. So I do have access consistently to those types of energy. That 4th motor, the sacral, is obviously not designed, because if that was defined, then that would make me one of the generator types. But I have 3 of the 4. So you could say I have access to actually quite a lot of energy in my design. But of course, what's interesting about those motors is that unlike the sacral, they aren't that constant source of energy. And each of those motors can, of course, be effectively used up. And so it's almost like you kind of empty the tank and then you need to refill the tank. And I think what is worth noting is that over time, I've started to get a bit more of a sense of almost the nuances of those energy and what I'm actually tapping into at any point. The one that is probably the easiest for me, as I have emotional authority, and if you have a defined solar plexus, you will also have emotional authority, is that the wave nature of that energy is very easy to know where I am on that wave, because I can feel it. You know, I'm either very happy, feeling very powerful, feeling like I can take on the world, or I'm down in that place where everything feels hard and I'm tired, and my emotions are those sort of lower emotions that you could say. So I can often tell when I'm riding high on that. But then when we look at the other types, I can feel them kind of kick in, and I feel that root energy kick in when it's like, yep, I'm on a deadline. There feels like there's this sort of pressure, but I'm thriving off that pressure, and I'm kind of, it's like it's this pulsing, we're going to make it happen kind of energy. And then I find the one that is almost dangerous, for want of a better expression, for me to tap into is the willpower, is that heart, that ego center motor, because that's sometimes I can get so on that energy and I can push through. And what happens is when I'm pulling on all of these, all of a sudden they can run out. And I think this is possibly a very important reflection for anyone who is a projector, is that I have found that it's not necessary a gradual thing where I gradually feel like I'm starting to feel a bit more tired. I can find that all of a sudden, it's like the tank has emptied. And if I allow myself to completely empty the tank, then the time it takes for me to rest and relax to refill that tank is longer than if I can work to never allowing that tank to actually fully empty. So that's something to look at. If you can actually prioritize relaxation, prioritize some being over the doing, and not allow yourself to get all the way down to empty, you almost find that time to refill shortens, which is something that's worth noting. And I've also found that I can push through. If I go out and be amongst sacral beings, I can tap into that sacral energy. Nowadays I spend a lot more time working in my own aura because I work for myself, and the team members I have are not physically here in Byron. They are dotted in other places. And I have time when I physically come together with clients. I have time when I physically come together with friends, but I spend a lot more time on my own. I'm sat here recording this podcast on my own, or sitting at home doing a lot of work. And so sometimes I just need to go to a co-working space. I need to go to the library to be amongst those people, and I can tap into that sacral energy. But oh my gosh, if I have let the other ones start to really run low, as soon as I move away from those beings, it's like I fall off this energy cliff. And okay, if I want to be able to identify when I need to slow down before I really get that full empty feeling, how can I do that? Well, part of it is just understanding that even though I believe that I can go along and do all of this stuff all the time, that's just simply not how I'm designed. But I have found that there is one cue for me that does indicate that I'm starting to get towards empty. And that for me is around how I feel about making decisions. So I'm a confident decision maker. And once I have moved through, using my authority, my emotional authority to make my decision, I act very easily. And even though, with an emotional authority, you can never be 100% confident, I'm pretty solid in making my decisions. I'm not a ditherer. I don't need to think about it for ages. I kind of know where I am. However, when I'm starting to get really low on energy, my ability to make decisions starts to diminish. It's like my clarity goes, and I find what are arguably very, very small decisions really quite overwhelming. And so that is one of the cues that I have discovered around energy in my system without diving too deep. The next bit that I wanted to dig into was around socializing and being an extrovert. So I am absolutely an extrovert. I have some very interesting tension in my chart because I'm a profile of 2-4. So my hermit loves me to be at home, and I can be at home for days on my own, not see a soul, and I'm so happy. But my 4, the networker, just loves to be out. And when she's turned on, she can totally turn it on and loves being amongst the people. And I am an extrovert. If you use the extrovert introvert as a way of looking at your energy, I'm absolutely an extrovert. And before human design, I was always kind of interested because I knew I was an extrovert, but I was like, I'm not sure that I'm a standard extrovert. And this whole you're an introverted extrovert, extroverted introvert, or whatever you see, I was like, no, that's not what it's about. But there's something interesting in the nuance of how my extroversion works, because what happens for me is, if you imagine me as like a castle, why not? And you've got the drawbridge. It's like all of a sudden, with absolutely no warning, the drawbridge comes up. And what I mean is that I can be out, I can be chatting, I can look like I'm having a wonderful time, and I feel great. And it's just like the flick of a switch. It's like, I need to now leave. I've got to go home. And it's not that I am tired per se. It's not that I've sort of stopped having fun as such, but it's just that I need to physically remove myself from the situation. And if you know about being a projector, we tend to have a lot of open centers. basically all the way down the center of my design is open with the exception of that root. And so in those open centers, I'm absorbing stuff from everybody around me and I'm amplifying it. And so my aura picks up all of that stuff. And it's almost like picking up rubbish in my aura. And there comes this point where all of a sudden, and it's quite binary, I'm okay and I'm not okay. The aura is so full and I have to go home. I have to be in my own energy and I just have to discharge all of that to feel good, to feel balanced again. And it's really about physically getting away from people, which is why having somebody in my house who's like, oh, but I'll just sit on the couch and read quietly. Even if we're not having a conversation, it doesn't have the same effect. And I've noticed this when I've had romantic partners and, you know, what it's like when you fall in love with someone and you want to be with them all the time. And I love being with them and I love sleeping next to them and all of that stuff. But then it's like I'd get home to my home and I would feel this level of relief and I wouldn't really know why. And so this is it. I'm an extrovert, but I also have this point where I'm collecting so much stuff from other people when I'm in these spaces that I have to go home and I need to be physically on my own. And how that might practically work out in a scenario such as, for example, let's say I go on holiday with a group of girlfriends and we share a house. And, you know, most people like a little bit of their alone time to go do something on their own. Well, for me, like heading off into town where I'm then around lots of other people and then I'm in their auras, no, that isn't sufficient. I want to go somewhere quiet, which is why for me, going and finding a quiet beach, going for a walk in nature, being in my garden, being in my home where there's nobody around is the most balancing thing. And if I don't do that for a period of time every day, I really, really do feel quite unsettled. And I'm not sure so much what is my stuff and what is somebody else's stuff. So the next reflection I have is around the whole waiting for the invitation. And waiting for the invitation is the strategy of all projectors. And it's probably one of those things that when you're giving somebody a human design read or they're learning about their human design, for a projector, it's like, well, how do I navigate this, right? I want to go out in the world and do my stuff and create my business or whatever the thing is. And yet you're telling me that I've got to wait for this invitation. And it can make you feel as if you've got to be actually pretty passive in this scenario. And I've found a few interesting things as I have really played with this concept of waiting for an invitation. And one of those is that you will, you know, if you read the information about human design, if you have a read, etc., you'll hear that if you are a projector and if you are receiving no invitations, if you are effectively in a place where there is just crickets, that can be the universe has created some space because there is something that you need to heal and you need to look at before you're ready to actually start receiving all of those invitations. And when I started to dig into my design was actually not long after I had had absolutely one of these periods of crickets. And I can look back now and see how that was absolutely true for me. So I'm saying that if you are a projector and if you feel like you're in limbo, a dead zone, there's just nothing happening. It feels like it doesn't matter what you do. You just feel like no one's seeing you, no one's inviting you, nothing is popping up for you. You feel really, really lost. Then I would absolutely encourage you to really go inwards and have a look at what is it that I might need to tidy up and explore and reflect on and possibly heal within myself to actually set me up to receive invitations. The second thing about receiving an invitation that I have found is that when you know, you know. And what I mean by this is when you really get a true invitation, and a true invitation is one that is absolutely specifically for you. So it's not just some big broad invitation that has kind of been shared with lots of people. But when someone actually comes and invites you very, very specifically, you can really feel that in your body. And then once you have used your authority to decide if that is the right invitation for you, it's incredible how everything flows out the back of it. And this is this whole thing around when you're just being and you're able to receive those invitations and follow the correct ones, life is so much more easeful for you as a projector. And we're not built to work. They say maybe 20 hours a week is what a projector is built for. So we aren't supposed to be out there kind of slogging away and pushing and making stuff happen in quite the same way that a generator or even a manifestor can do with their ability to initiate. So we actually want to be in this easeful place so that the energy that we do have is being used in the most economical fashion. And so really being in that state where you're just calling in those correct invitations is the optimal place, because the optimal invitations really are just so easy for you to then follow and execute. And they don't require a lot of exertion to sort of make the next part of that process flow for you. And, to give you an example, I was invited to come and spend several months in Europe, and it was a very specific invitation to me. And I felt through my authority. After a couple of weeks, I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I'm supposed to be doing this European summer. And then one of the stages in that process, of course, was to look at subletting my place here in Ewingsdale and Byron. And so I, just put it out to my network because I'm a line 4. And within an hour, I had someone who's absolutely the right person. We had an amazing conversation, very aligned. And then this beautiful woman was just so happy to lock it in financially as well. It just moved so, so easily. And then I found a great flight and I booked that great flight. And it's because this is all the overflow or the afterflow from an invitation that is absolutely correct for me. So I encourage you to just tune into what it feels like when you get an invitation that is really, really right for you. However, of course, when you're not getting invitations or you'd like more invitations, that can be such a frustrating thing for a projector because you don't feel recognized, you don't feel seen. It's like you've got all this wisdom and stuff to share. Nobody's asking you for it. And yet when you try to push, all that does is almost push things further away from you. So you feel almost like you're in this bit of this catch-22. My personal experience has been that there is 2 things that I can proactively be doing as a projector, which draws in those invitations. The first one of those is to talk passionately about what it is that I'm interested in and share the perspectives and share the wisdom in a way that doesn't feel like I'm forcing it upon other people. For example, this podcast is a great example of that. I'm here sharing stuff that I want to share with you. I mean, you can choose to listen to this or not, but I'm sharing my perspectives, my take on the world, my take on things, my wisdom through this particular channel. And doing that is a way that people can receive you if they want to without feeling like you are just pushing stuff onto them. So passionate, talking about something passionately and sharing your perspective. The other aspect is curiosity. I found curiosity to be really powerful. And so when I'm just genuinely really interested in something, either purely for my experience, maybe I'm digging even deeper into hypnosis and learning even more about it. Or perhaps I'm sitting across from somebody and I'm truly genuinely curious and excited to learn about them and hear their perspectives and what's happening for them. That naturally opens up a space energetically for an invitation to come in. So, and again, think of the podcast. I'm either here sharing my perspectives or often I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm genuinely curious about these people's experiences of living life by their design. So if you're a projector and if you feel that you're in a bit of a dead zone and if you don't think it's a big case of there's something to heal, then just come back to yourself and just get passionate about what you are, get curious, and share things in a non kind of confronting way. Which kind of leads me on to the last point that I want to reflect on today's podcast. And this is actually running my business, because the first few years of running my business, I absolutely approached it like a generator, because I've been in the workforce now for 18 odd years. And well, that's full time, a bit more than that, part time, but full time, I've been in the workforce for 18 years now. So I have so much conditioning around what work looks like. And for projectors, deconditioning around work is a really big part of the process, right? Because everything out there talks about how hard you're supposed to work, how many hours you're supposed to work. If you're an entrepreneur, you're supposed to work even more hours. And when you start to tap into a lot of the education out there around, if you go to somebody for marketing or how should you do your social media, so much of it is created by generators because they are so much of the population, right? And their strategies and approaches are not necessarily wrong. And for them, they can be really, really effective, but they're not necessarily right for a projector. And I have found that I have, gone, okay, I got to do social media, and I've got to create content. I've got to be out there, pushing out my message and, constantly inviting people to come into my offers, et cetera, et cetera. And that really isn't the projector way. It's a generator way. And as we know, as projectors, if we aren't invited and then we kind of come forward to somebody like that, all it does is push the person away. So I would be, executing all of this marketing and social media, and all I felt like was it worked less effectively than when I sat back and I didn't do that to that force. Now, of course, sitting back is not also completely the thing, because we don't have to passively sit back and completely wait for that invitation. We can share our perspectives and we can be curious and we can talk about the things that we're passionate about. But for me, trying to market my business like a generator was not the way forward. And also trying to show up with the energy of a generator doesn't work. And so for me, designing a work week where there is some space, there's some space to flow, there's some space for those motors to, fluctuate in what comes through with me is really, really powerful. And by incorporating being as well as doing into how I run a business, and not trying to force and push and market like a generator, that's also been a really powerful reflection that I have had around running my business as a projector. And that's really tricky to do, in all honesty, because everything you're going to be told out there is going to suggest that you should be doing it like a generator. So much conditioning around this. So you have to keep checking yourself on it all the time. And it can actually feel really quite uncomfortable in places, if we're honest. Anyway, but in saying all of those things, in talking about the energy, in talking about what it's kind of like for me socially at times, and waiting for the invitation and running a biz, I love being a projector. I think it's an absolutely wonderful type to be. And if you are a projector, I hope that you are also discovering some of the wonderful things that are part of your amazing design. And look, all the designs are great. And the type as well is just one little element, so all those other parts of your design are very much into playing with that to build up what your experience is of being you. But anyway, I hope that has been useful for you. A reminder, you can get your chart and find out if you're a projector. And also you can come join me in the Purpose Pathway if you like. Now, the Purpose Pathway is my new membership, and it's there so that you can live life by your design. And there's kind of two sides to that. So it's so you can totally dig into your human design, get to know yourself. We're going to be exploring the concepts of purpose and your life's work and all of that stuff through your human design. as well. And there's also all of my teachings around conscious lifestyle design. So how you can really develop the next stage of your life into something that you're completely in love with. I've also got Build Your Freedom Fund in there. So many of the things that we want to do for our next phase of life do require some level of a pot of money. And I built my own freedom fund to make my transition from leaving my career into doing what I do now easier and safer and more enjoyable. And I teach all of the stuff you need in there so that you can actually build your freedom fund. So you've got that practical element in place for you to move forward into the next phase of your life, whether that is leaving a career, whether that's retraining, whether that's a trip that you want to go on. And it's also a great process, even if you want to clear debt. So very, very useful. It's full of hypnosis. We've got hypnosis tracks for all of the gene keys, the 64 gates that sit in your human design, as well as loads of other live workshops, live coaching with me, Q&As. It's a fantastic space. If you are basically in a place where you're looking to move into that next phase of your life and you want a bit more clarity, you want to go within and you want to build some of the confidence to actually move forward and do the stuff to bring it all into a reality. I could talk about it for ages, but I'm not going to. But if you're interested to find out more, if you go to michelleboyd.com/purpose, that will also be in the show notes. You can find out a little bit more about what's in it. You can come and join me. And of course, get in contact over Instagram or the website if you want to discuss if the purpose pathway is right for you. So I wish you a wonderful day, whatever you're doing. And I will see you next week for another episode of the podcast.